The cold did not wait for winter that year. It came early, sharp, and merciless, like a warning no one wanted to hear. And on that same morning, with frost clinging to her sleeves, Marta Kelstead was thrown out of her home with nothing but a 9-year-old child and $7. No cabin, no family, just the wind, the open prairie, and the kind of cold that could swallow a person whole. Viewers, if stories of strength matter to you, stay with this one. It may stay with you long after it ends. They said the winter ahead would be the worst in 20 years. But no one, not the townspeople, not the miners, not even the old ranchers, could guess what one mother and daughter were about to build in the hidden hills of Montana. It all began with a door that closed behind them and never opened again. Marta stood outside the company house in Elkhorn, holding her daughter Britta's hand. The house had been theirs for 3 years. Now it belonged to the mine again, just as her husband's body had, and he had been buried 6 weeks earlier under timber and stone, the kind of death that came without warning and left debts behind. The foreman, Orrin Thatcher, handed her the eviction notice with the same coldness he used to record equipment failures. "You have 72 hours, he said. "The company needs the room for men who can work." That was all. She asked about her husband's final wages. Thatcher laughed before he even answered. "They paid for the funeral," he said. "Oh, that's the end of it." Then he walked away. Marta did not beg. She did not cry. She simply tightened her grip on Britta's hand and stepped off the porch. They walked out of town with a small trunk, a hand axe, a pot, and the $7 she guarded like treasure. By nightfall, they were miles away. By morning, Marta had blisters on her palms, swollen feet, and a child who tried not to show how cold she was. 2 days later, they stood in the limestone hills southwest of Townsend, a place carved by wind and time, not meant for the living. And there, on a slope facing the sun, they found what remained of another family's failure: a sagging well, a collapsed sod hut, and a root cellar dug into the hillside, its wooden roof broken and fallen in, half filled with dirt, leaves, and the smell of years gone wrong. Britta asked softly, "Mama, will we sleep here?" Marta did not answer at first. For any other family, this place would have been a danger, a wound in the earth waiting to swallow up whatever fell inside. But for Marta, who had nothing left except a daughter she refused to lose, it was something, not a home, not yet, but a pause from the wind. The calendar said mid-frost was 6 weeks away. Winter would follow fast, and in Montana, winter did not wait for a person to be ready. Marta had been raised in Norway. She had seen cold break strong men. She had seen bodies carried down from mountain trails, faces pale as candles, eyes frozen open. But even that cold was kinder than what Montana could deliver. She needed shelter before the first freeze. She needed wood for a winter that demanded 5 cords or more. She needed strength she did not have and time she could not borrow, and she had none of these. All she had was the ground beneath her feet and a hole in the hillside. 3 days later, Ryder approached at night with hands like weathered timber and eyes that had seen too much loss. His name was Gunnar Holvik, a rancher who had buried a wife and 2 infant sons in a Montana blizzard years before. He took one look at Marta and Britta sitting beside the broken cellar, eating thin cornmeal mush over a small fire, and he knew exactly what he was looking at: a woman who would be dead by Christmas, and a child who would not last that long. "You cannot stay here," he said. "A woman cannot cut enough timber. 5 cords at least, 6 to be safe." Marta did not argue. Holvik leaned closer, voice rough as split pine. "You will freeze in that hole, and you will take your daughter with you." Then he mounted his horse, turned away, and rode off without looking back. Britta watched him disappear over the ridge, her small face still unreadable, but her father's pale eyes fixed on the empty horizon. "Mama," she whispered, "is he right?" Marta looked into the cellar. The dark, the broken beams, the cold breath rising from the earth. "I don't know," she said. But that night, as the fire burned low, Marta realized something. The wind outside cut like a blade, but inside the cellar, even half collapsed, even open to the sky, the air held a strange steadiness. It did not bite. It did not change. It simply stayed, and that small difference lit a spark inside her mind that would change everything. Half a world away. Her grandmother in Norway had called it the earth's breath, the warmth that lived below the frost, quiet and steady. If the earth could offer even a little of that heat, if she could capture it, shape it, protect her daughter with it, maybe, just maybe, the impossible winter ahead was not impossible after all. Marta climbed into the broken cellar at dawn, and she meant only to pull out the rotten timbers for firewood. Every scrap mattered now. But the moment she reached the bottom, she froze. The air was warmer, not warm but steady, like the earth had its own heartbeat. Above ground, the wind cut to the bone. Down here, the cold softened. She touched the dirt wall. It held a gentle heat, neither rising nor falling with the morning chill. Her grandmother's words whispered from a childhood far away. "The ground keeps its own warmth, Marta. It never forgets the seasons." That thought dug deeper than her shovel ever could. She could never cut enough wood, never build a cabin fast enough, never survive a winter that demanded the strength of a small army. But underground, the earth offered 50 for free. She would not need to fight the cold, only lift the temperature a few more degrees. 15, 20. just enough to live. It was madness. It was hope. And for a woman with $7 and a child, hope mattered more than sense. So Marta climbed out of the cellar, looked at the sun rising over the limestone hills, and made her decision. She would dig, she would shape the hillside itself into shelter, and she would trust the earth more than she trusted men who promised help. For 2 weeks she worked alone. She swung her pick from dawn until dark. Dirt filled her boots. Her hands split open and bled. She hauled rock one piece at a time, each stone heavier than the last. Britta worked beside her, carrying small loads, sorting limestone flakes with the seriousness of a grown woman. It was slow, painful work, the kind of work that made the sky spin if she stood up too fast. But she would not stop. One evening, as Marta dragged a stone flat across the prairie, a rider approached, a broad-shouldered woman with weathered cheeks and tired eyes. Her name was Ina Baka, a Swedish widow who had survived her own storms. She watched Marta work for a long moment. "What are you building?" Ina asked. Marta explained her idea. The earth's warmth, the limestone walls, the chimney she would form from clay, the drainage channel, the lowered heating needs, the simple mathematics that turned impossible into maybe. Ina listened without interruption. Then she said softly, "You are digging a grave." Marta nodded. "Yes, but maybe a warm one." Ina stared at her hands, split skin, dried blood, swollen knuckles. Then she looked at Britta sitting on the hillside, sorting stones with quiet patience. "You don't have time," Ina warned. Marta said. She knew, "If the water seeps in, you'll drown. I will dig drainage. If the smoke does not vent, you'll die in your sleep. I will build 2 vents. Ina looked at her again, longer this time. "You have thought about this," she said. Marta replied, "I have thought about nothing else." Ina turned her horse. Before leaving, she gave one small nod. Not approval, but respect. "If you live through November," she said, "I'll give you half a smoked ham." It was the closest thing to a blessing Marta had yet received. She kept digging. The days vanished into work. The nights vanished into pain, and the calendar marched toward frost. Stone by stone, she raised the walls. Her weight fell with every passing week. Her dress hung loose, and her cheeks hollowed. Her hands grew calloused in a way she no longer recognized. Blisters broke. New ones formed. Stone cut her thighs. A falling slab crushed her thumbnail black. Still, she worked. Britta watched her mother shrinking as the cellar grew. She tried to carry bigger stones, tried to swing the pick, tried to help in ways a 9-year-old should never need to. Marta stopped her each time. "I can do the building," Marta whispered. "You keep me moving." And somehow, between the two of them, they did. Mid-story reminder. Viewers, remember this. On the frontier, survival was never about strength alone. It was about decisions made in the dark when no one was watching, and refusing to quit, even when quitting made more sense. In early September, the man who had thrown her out returned. Orrin Thatcher rode up with the company's surveyor. He expected to find a corpse or at least a woman broken by reality. Instead, he found Marta deep in the limestone, stacking stones with measured precision. He dismounted and stepped to the cellar's rim. "This land is not yours," he said. Marta answered calmly. "It is abandoned. I am improving it. I filed a claim." The surveyor nodded. The records were clear. Thatcher's face thinned with anger. "You're digging your own grave," he hissed. "And when you die, the company will scrape your bones out by spring." Britta stood behind her mother, staring at the man who had thrown them into the cold, and she said nothing. Her silence was sharper than words. Marta held Thatcher's gaze without blinking. He was a much larger man, but she had faced worse than him in the dark of early morning and the cold of lonely nights. She did not step back. Thatcher finally turned away. "You cannot win," he said over his shoulder. Marta whispered, "I don't need to win. I only need to survive." Thatcher did not respond. He rode away with the bitterness of someone who feared being proven wrong. Yet the work continued. September frost a bit early. Snow brushed the hills by mid. Her roof went up 12 days later, a patchwork of salvaged beams, creek-cut poles, birch bark, sod, and faith. When she lit the stove for the first time, smoke rose clean through the clay chimney. When she touched the limestone walls, they held warmth like cupped hands. When she looked at Britta sleeping on the raised platform, wrapped in a wool blanket Ina had gifted earlier, something inside Marta finally steadied. For the first time since her husband died, she dared to think one fragile thought: maybe we will live. But winter was coming fast, and the true test had not yet begun. Before the snow truly settled, the first blizzard struck. Winds tore across the limestone hills with the fury of a living thing, driving the temperature down to 22 below in a single night. Inside the earth shelter, Marta sealed the entrance with the wool blanket Ina had given her, stuffing the edges with dried grass. Then she waited out outside. The storm screamed. Inside, the thermometer held at 58. It felt unreal. But winter does not stop for wonder. It pushes, it tests, it searches for weakness, and weakness found them in early January. Britta's cough began as a small rattle in the morning, nothing more than a sound a tired child might make. By nightfall, it turned heavy, thick, as if each breath had to fight its way through her chest. Fever followed, then chills. then the frightening quiet of a child too tired to speak. Marta wrapped her daughter in blankets, holding her close, listening to the breathing that rose and fell like a wounded bird. But there was no doctor near enough to help, no medicine stronger than melted snow and a mother's prayer. And then, as if the world had waited for her weakest hour, the second blizzard hit. January 9th, 1887. At dawn, the air sat strangely warm at 18. By noon, the wind howled across the plains. By nightfall, snow had buried the world in a white blindness, and the temperature fell faster than any storm Marta had ever known. -22, 34, -46. But by midnight, the mercury was gone from the thermometer, vanished into the bulb. They were trapped, the entrance filled with snow. The wind clawed at the earth above, and Britta's fever climbed. Marta fed the fire. She spooned water into her daughter's mouth. She whispered stories from Norway when the child trembled. Then she made a decision only a desperate mother could understand. She let the fire die. She needed to know if the earth would hold. What if the warmth she had trusted so fiercely would still rise in their darkest hour? When the last log burned to embers, the room began to cool. 1 hour -56, 2 hours 54, 3 hours 52, 4 hours 51. Then it stopped falling. Outside, the world was 46 below. Inside, without fire, the earth held 51. That 97 difference was the margin between life and loss. And sometime before dawn, as the embers glowed faintly in the small iron stove, Britta stirred. Her hand found Marta's arm. "Mama," she whispered, "I'm hungry." The fever had broken. Marta covered her mouth with both hands, too overwhelmed to speak. She had not slept in 3 days. She had eaten almost nothing. She did not even feel the tears running down her cheeks. She only knelt beside her daughter and thanked the earth that held them both. The cold lasted 16 days beyond that blizzard. 16 days of temperatures so cruel that even seasoned ranchers burned furniture to stay alive. Trees exploded in the night. Cattle froze standing. Children all across the territory fell to fevers and frost. But in the limestone hills, Marta's shelter stayed above 55 with the fire burning. Thin soups, cornmeal mush, potatoes from Ina's gift, scraps of ham sliced as thin as they could be stretched. It was not comfort, but it was survival. By late January, when the first gentle warming came, Britta could stand again. She helped her mother clear the entrance tunnel, laughing when she slipped on the packed snow for the first time in months. That sound alone made the long winter worth enduring. One by one, visitors came. Gunnar Holvik arrived first, half expecting to find a grave. Instead, he stepped inside the shelter, felt the sudden wash of warmth, and froze in place. He touched the limestone wall, baffled. "This should not work," he whispered. Marta showed him the vents, the chimney, the stonework. "I told you that you would freeze in this hole," he said shakily. "I was wrong." He rode away with a new understanding and a quiet respect. Ina arrived next. She was thinner, worn down by months in a surface cabin that had barely held above freezing. She stepped inside Marta's shelter, closed her eyes, and let the warmth soak into her bones. "You did it," she said simply. Others followed. Homesteaders, ranchers, even the Lutheran minister. They came to see the impossible place where a widow and a child had survived a winter meant to break stronger families. No one left unchanged. When spring returned, Thatcher came as well. He stood at the entrance, looking down at the stone walls glowing in the soft light. Marta met him with her homestead claim in hand. "The company may dispute this," he warned. "They can try," she said, "but I have witnesses, and I am alive." He had no answer. He left without looking into the shelter again. By summer, 7 families had begun digging their own earth homes using Marta's method. By the next winter, 4 were finished. In time, dozens more would rise across the hills, all because one mother refused to let the cold take her child. Years passed. Marta proved her claim. She built a small house above the cellar. She remarried a stonemason who admired her walls as much as her courage. Britta grew strong, carrying with her the memory of the winter she nearly lost. Marta died in 1921, long after the mining town faded and the hard winters turned to stories. But the shelter she built still stands quiet, steady, warm in the heart of the earth. Proof that a human being, even with almost nothing left, can still shape a miracle with their own 2 hands. Closing reflection. The earth does not ask where you come from. It does not judge what you have lost. And it holds the same warmth for widow and rancher, for the strong and for the weary. Marta Kelstad dug into the limestone not to challenge winter, but to save the only thing she had left in the world. And the earth answered. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes in quiet strength.